Okay? All right, let's move on to electricity. Okay, with electricity, we make electricity in California, obviously. We do it through a number of different variety of ways. We do it with our power generation plants, so we feed gas to a power plant. They generate electricity. We have a couple of those in the Bay Area, in the Antioch and Pittsburgh area. We do it through our hydroelectric, all the dams in the Sierras. Water generates electricity, right? Not a lot of water right now. We also do it from nuclear. We have a nuclear facility in San Luis Obispo, and if you didn't know it, we have a small facility in Humboldt, although the greenies haven't heard about it yet. It's sitting up there. The other ways we do it are solar, and we also do it with wind power now. Those are now generating electricity that we're putting onto the grid. Anybody have solar on their homes? Okay, we'll skip that conversation. So what happens is the electricity comes from the power source, comes onto our transmission lines. The transmission lines are anywhere from 60 to 500,000 volts. These are the huge towers that you typically see along the open space areas that could come through town over here, right? Then what happens is the transmission power comes into a substation. At the substation, it drops the voltage to a distribution system. That distribution system is that 4,000 to 21,000. That's the wood poles you're seeing around the neighborhood. That's our distribution system. Okay? Then what happens is the wire comes to a pole, and typically right from the pole, the wire will drop down to your house on a wire that looks like this. It's a three-phase wire. So this wire has 120 volts in it. This one has another 120. This is a neutral, so no energy in this. And this provides you with 240 volts of energy to your residential service. In a commercial building, you just double it, 240, 240, 480 voltage for a commercial building. You need to be careful with this wire. As you can see, 21,000 volts, you know that's going to kill you. You know 500,000 volts is going to kill you. But even at 240 volts, you can get electrocuted from this. In 2005, we lost a Santa Clara County fire captain in a structure fire because as he comes out of the building, this wire had fallen off the building, was laying in a tree, had popped around, and then it stopped. And when it stopped, nobody realized that it was still energized. He walks into it, and he gets killed, line of duty death for Santa Clara. This device right here is what we call a recloser box. It's basically a breaker box on our system. When we have a short in the system, this breaker will snap. In your home, when you have a short, you have to manually reset your breaker, right? That's a good thing. That's a safety mechanism, which means that you have to fix the problem first, then reset your breaker, and everything's good. For PG&E, what this is doing is keeping our lines from being over-energized and being damaged. So have you ever been in an outage, the electricity pops off, then it goes back on for a second, pops off, back on, pops off, back on, pops on, back off. That's this recloser box resetting itself. And the reason we talk about this is set on a timer. The timer varies depending on what kind of a neighborhood you live in. It could go for a few seconds, it could go for 15 minutes. So if you have a wire down in your neighborhood after an earthquake, the poles are leaning, the wires are down, and you're walking around and it's just laying there and it looks like nothing's going on with it, we don't want you to touch it. Because what will happen is within a few minutes this may reset and re-energize the wire and you're going to get electrocuted if you're trying to move it. All right? So we don't want you to move any wires that are on the ground. Leave them on the ground. So a little bit about electricity. And I'm not an electrician by any means, and I'm going to probably kill this part of it. But basically, the problem with electricity is the amperage. The voltage isn't what kills you, it's the amperage. It only takes a quarter amp to stop your heart, put you in cardiac arrest. So how I kind of explain this is, I can take my finger and I can stick it in that socket with 120 volts in it, and I'm going to get a little bite, and it's going to hurt me. And that's because there's some voltage there. And I don't draw any amps, so it's not going to really kill me. However, if I plug a hairdryer in there, the hairdryer is drawing 7 amps. Now I put my finger in the hairdryer, I'm going to get killed instantly because 7 amps is going to put me in cardiac arrest. Okay, so that's the difference between voltage and amps. Again, if anybody's an electrician, you probably can explain that better than me. But okay, we have, this is called touch potential. What it really means is that when our wire comes down, that anything that wire touches can potentially be energized. So where you need to be cautious is you may have a wire down over here on the fence around the pool, and you may think you're far enough away from it, but the reality is that entire fence can be energized with 21,000 volts from the neighborhood wire area. So any wires that are on the ground, anything that they're touching, you want to have a safety distance, right? Don't touch the metal or the objects that the wire's touching directly, but also on a wire that's down on the ground, you want to have 30 feet distance from that wire on a dry surface. When it's a wet surface, like some moisture we have on the ground today from some of the rain, double it to 60 feet distance for the wire down. And this is with our distribution system, the wires that are coming off the wood poles in the area. Have you ever seen wires arc a tree? Would you think that this tree would be able to conduct electricity to the ground? Absolutely. You think wood is an insulator. It's wet wood. It has moisture in it. It will conduct electricity to the ground. So if you're walking up along this tree and you touch this tree with the energy coming through here, 21,000 volts, you will get energized. So again, in your neighborhood, if you see that happening after an earthquake, create a perimeter around that, flag it, put cones up, have someone stand there, keep everybody away until we can get the energy shut off in that situation.
So the same thing could happen in a really bad storm.
Absolutely. Bad storm. So we're not just talking, with electricity, we're not just talking about an earthquake. We're talking about windstorm, bad weather, earthquake,
We have a
tsunami.
lot of neighborhoods around here have a lot of trees.
Yeah.
The PG&E comes and
Yes.
requires that the trees be trimmed, but even so, those wires are really close.
They're very close. The wires that go through the trees typically will have an insulator on it, and it's supposed to protect the wire from being energized. But the insulation can break down, and even a pinhole in here will still allow it to arc into the wood and energize that tree.
And how would we know the tree is energized?
You'll see the sparking. You may get a short in the system, which means you're going to have an outage in the area, and we would have to come out and investigate. Typically what we'll do is we'll shut the energy off in the area, we'll do the vegetation management, and then we'll turn electricity back on. And that's kind of a good point. If it's a private tree, this wire goes onto your property, then you have to contact us. And what we'll do is we'll shut the energy off to this, allow you to trim your tree however you want to do that. And if you're contracting to somebody to do that for you, they should do the same thing. Contact us, we'll shut the electricity off, you manage the tree however you want to, then we'll re-energize the wire. So we do that, and we do that free of charge.
Portion of the neighborhood or your house?
No, it'll just be your house. It would be out without energy for a couple of hours while you're doing the trimming on the tree. Yeah.
Do tree trimmers come in an emergency like that?
They can. If you, it's going to cost you a lot of money, but yeah, absolutely they can. Anybody come in an emergency, right? PG&E, though, we do have quite a big program in maintaining our vegetation on our public trees in the thoroughfares and so forth. So we should be out there on a regular basis. Which brings me to a quick question: have you seen all the helicopters that were going through Concord and all that stuff? If you're not aware of it, this is a huge rewiring project that's going from Antioch Power Plant all the way to Moraga. And what they're doing is they're stringing two new large transmission lines along the towers that are already existing. The first thing they're doing is they're coming up and they're putting a brand new top on the tower. So they're hanging, two guys are hanging from a helicopter. They drop them on the tower. They bring the piece on there. They bolt it all down. And then they bring two new wires from one tower to that tower. They're stringing it along. Then they move to the next one. This is an ongoing project. Started earlier this year. It's going to go on till probably November as we get into the Moraga area and do that, just so you're aware of that. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk quickly about is, have you had any information? Yes, ma'am.
Are they protecting those from terrorism? The towers?
The towers? No.
Why not?
No. Very difficult to do security on our towers. You know where they're at. I mean, if you think about the grid system and how these things are open to the public, we have difficulty keeping people from climbing our towers, let alone having access to them. Not to mean if they took out a tower, it's very easy for us to reroute the energy through a different system because we're on a big grid system. So one tower is not going to take down the electrical system. Okay. Now the substations is a whole different ballgame, and yes, we have a lot of security at our substations. The other program I wanted to mention was the Community Pipeline Pathways Program. Has anybody heard about that in Walnut Creek? No. So this is referring to gas lines. our large transmission lines, the ones that run through Walnut Creek here. If you've seen anybody cutting trees down, that is a contractor for PG&E. We've been doing vegetation management. We have the right-of-way 15 feet on either side of these large transmission lines. And the purpose of that is to clear the vegetation for several reasons: to keep the roots from damaging the pipeline and causing leaks. Secondarily, allowing access for emergency responders to a gas leak on that pipeline. So there's multiple reasons that we're doing that. As we take one tree down, we're replacing it with two wherever the city of Walnut Creek wants to have them. So that's a program you're going to probably see happening. It's probably already started and will continue to go on to the end of the year in this area, just so you know. Okay, back to electricity. Electricity can conduct through other things like ladders, especially metal ladders will conduct electricity. This is 21,000 volts, conducts through the ladder, but as it gets into the cement, it actually crystallizes the cement, and I have a piece of that here. Crystallizes the cement and will go into the rebar in the cement, and that entire cement pad can be energized. So it's something to be concerned about. If you have wires down on cement, or on anything else like that, again, that can be conductive material. Cement's made out of water, it's got the rebar in it, that will conduct electricity. That's what it looks like. 4 inches into the cement, crystallizes it to this, looks just like this right here, and then goes into the rebar.
Can we pass that around?
Sure. It's a little dirty in a sense, because it's from that. That piece is actually from the, I don't know if you heard about the incident that happened in Orinda 2 years ago with the window washers that got electrocuted from the transmission lines. That piece came from that incident. So this is called step potential. Step potential means that when a wire touches the ground, that the ground becomes energized. As you start to get further away from this wire right here, the energy starts to dissipate. It will dissipate down to 30 feet away. We talked about that being the safety margin. At 21,000 volts, 30 feet, no more energy. The problem is as you walk through, as you walk through this area right here, your feet are in two different levels of energy. Electricity likes to be equal. So as I'm walking through here, this foot's at 7,000, this one's at 14,000. Energy goes through me, and this is how we get electrocuted. So you need to avoid that. If you have wires down and you've walked into an area where your feet start to tingle and you understand that you're probably going to be energized, you want to put your feet together. They have to be touching. And what you're going to do is you're going to hop out of there, just like a bunny rabbit, right? Feet together, you're going to go like this and just hop. And every time you land on the ground, your feet have to be together, touching each other. If you land and they're separated in any way, they're going to be at a different level of energy, and you have potential of being energized. All right, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the vehicles.
You were going to say shuffle, keep them side by side.
That's another method, and I'll show that one to you in a minute.
They actually be touching each other?
Yes, they have to be touching. Yeah. Yeah. No, because so when you start to do this and this, what happens? How many of you? I mean, I'm not that good at balancing, at this point in my life. So you don't have that ability to balance very well. And now, if all of a sudden I put my foot down or I fall over, and now my hand touches, I'm at two different levels of energy, and I'm going to get electrocuted. So the key is feet together, standing in the same spot, or if you're going to shuffle, and I'll go ahead and explain that. What that means is if you can't hop for some reason, and the hopping is going to get you out of there faster, is you're going to shuffle. That means your heels and toes will move back and forth, touching all the time like this. Okay? And that to 30 feet. Once you're 30 feet away, you're safe to go about your business.
Is this for wires down for both distribution and also for distribution lines?
So that's for distribution. So for transmission lines off the big towers, you want 100 feet distance on those because of the higher energy. The more energy, the more distance you want to be from those wires. Okay? All right. So you're in your neighborhood. We've had an earthquake. Wire breaks. It comes to the ground. The pole's leaning. These are all sagging over here. This is a dangerous place to be. You don't want to be underneath this area. You don't want to touch these wires. Remember, both ends of the wires are energized because we're on a grid system. So find the other end. Protect people from coming in contact with that. Again, flag it, cone it, whatever you're going to do. Protect both ends. You don't want to walk underneath here. You want to clear the area for 15 feet on either side, a 30-foot perimeter. The other reason we do that, when we put our wires up, we buy these huge spools, and we put them on the poles. While they were stored on the spools, they have what we call a recoil memory. so they have a kinetic stored energy in them, right? So the story not the story, but the incident that happened in 1996, Eureka, California, we had a CHP officer that was directing traffic underneath a situation like this. The pole was leaning, the wire had snapped, the energy was shut off, there was no more electricity concern here. He was directing traffic. He was nearly under the pole system when this happened. Another wire snaps, and as it does that, it whips back, hits him in his right leg, it amputates his right leg. Then he hits his head on the asphalt. He dies of a brain injury the next day at Sacramento Trauma Center. Line of duty death for CHP. So again, it's not just the electrical energy, but the mechanical energy stored in our wires that can be dangerous. So after an earthquake, you can see all the potential here for this to be a problem. So again, keep the people away from there. Don't walk underneath these areas, whatever you need to do to make that area safe. Structures, if the wire hits the structure, not a problem. We're just concerned about life right here. We don't want anybody being underneath that. If the wire comes down and it starts a structure fire, you're not going to be able to do anything about that. You're just going to have to let it burn. Yeah.
Well, that's what they're talking about with the valley fire right now. People are wanting to go back into their houses, but they've got this situation going on.
Yeah.
And they're worried about the poles falling, they're worried about...
So those situations are very, very dangerous. This is going to take us, considering the amount of damage in those areas, weeks to get electricity going in. In fact, what we're doing right now in the Butte area is we're bringing generators in and we're powering through the wires with generators to get the critical infrastructure up and running as quickly as possible. We may do that in the valley area, but the problem there is most of our facilities are down on the ground. They're burned. So we can't even do that to the wires that are there. So yeah, it's going to be...
The wires themselves, I think, were on fire.
Oh yeah, the insulation will burn, the wires will fall to the ground, and we'll get to that in the wildland section here in a minute, but the Oakland Hills fire, we lost a battalion chief during that situation as he was doing the evacuation. Oakland battalion chief, the wire that had been burned dropped off, hit him in the head, and was still energized, and it killed him. So you need to be concerned about those after the wildfires come through your area. And we can have fires in this area. We absolutely can. All right, let's see where we're at here. Again, wires right here, obviously electricity is shut off, but you can see all the danger. The wires, you need to have 30 feet distance right here. The transformer itself can be dangerous. There's oil inside the transformer. It's about 1,800 degrees, so you don't want to get the oil on you. If it's leaking, don't stand around underneath it. If it explodes, try to stay away from that area. Again, cordon off the area. Don't let anybody come in contact with it. So, as far as parking your vehicle, you want to stay, once the wire is broken or leaning like that, stay at least one full span away from the area that's compromised on our poles. One full span or 2 pole lengths. Our underground vaults, we talked a little bit about that. The only place that energy can go out is through the manhole cover, right? This is an 800-pound manhole that was easily displaced because of a faulty vault. The vault explodes, energy goes through the manhole cover, and it overturns this full-size Dodge pickup truck. Again, you can see what would happen if you're standing around these manhole covers during an explosion. So another area after an earthquake is don't stand around the manhole covers, electric or gas, for that situation. Okay. So safety at scene. Again, your personal safety is important. Make sure that you're working together again as a CERT group. All wires should be considered energized. Call PG&E. Again, in a major disaster, it's going to be a while before we get there. So you want to just cordon off the area and deny entry for anybody. And again, we talked about trees being energized in the right-of-way. Don't assume we've been notified. A lot of people think, well, someone else has called PG&E, and then we never get called, and we wonder why we don't come out there. So multiple calls is okay to do that. And then don't touch anything, even with gloves, sticks, wood. We talked about how wood can conduct electricity. Your broomsticks, all these things, dried wood, it's got dirt and oils on it, that can also conduct electricity. I can guarantee you I can take 500,000 volts and just about make anything conduct electricity, right? So you want to be very cautious of moving any wires. So let's talk a little bit about vehicles and down wires. If you have a situation where the vehicle is energized because a wire is on it and somebody's in the vehicle, this is a very stressful situation. There's 3 different scenarios we want to talk about. The first is the vehicle can be driven by the occupant. The wire is sitting on the vehicle. You just talk to them and tell them to go ahead and put the vehicle in drive, slowly move away, and the wire falls off and they're safe. Not a problem. Remember, you can't come within 30 feet of the vehicle. You have to yell the instructions to them, because if you come within 30 feet, there's potential for you to be energized from the ground. The next situation is wires on the vehicle can't be driven, it's smashed into the pole or whatever the case might be, and all you need to do is tell them to stay in the vehicle. Wait for PG&E to get there. We'll shut off the energy, and then we can get them out of the vehicle. That's the second best scenario. The worst case scenario is wires on the vehicle, it's energized, they're in the vehicle, and now it's on fire. So what are you going to do? This is a life and death situation, right? They can't stay in the vehicle, and they have to get out, and they have to do so properly. So this is where the method that we just talked about comes into play. So what you're going to do is you're going to instruct them on how to get out of the vehicle. And how we're going to do that is this is exactly the method you want to do that. Again, you can't come within 30 feet. 30-foot perimeter, you're yelling instructions at them. Have them open the door to the vehicle, get it all the way open. Now what we're going to do is tell them to put their arms across their chest. This is so that when they do get out, they don't touch the door of the vehicle and their feet are on the ground at the same time. They complete the circuit, now they get energized, right? Arms across their chest, move their feet to the door jamb, and once their feet are in the door jamb, they have to be together. From this point on, their feet stay together. Now all they're going to do from here is take a 2-foot hop out of the vehicle. They don't need to do a 10-foot long jump. What happens when I try to get too far away? I fall. Now my hand touches the ground, my feet are on the ground, I get electrocuted, right? So 2 feet's all you need. Right here, arms across the chest, feet together, 2-foot hop, right here, and then do it again until I'm 30 feet away. And then you can do the shuffle method. You have to do the first hop, but once you're out of the vehicle, then you can shuffle back and forth and get further away by doing that. This is if you're elderly, you have maybe a broken leg or some situation where you can't continue to hop. Okay? Any questions on that? No, it works. We've had people do it and survive.
You hope that they can even get the door open because they could be injured.
And that's a possibility. And again, I've been in the business for not as long as Rod has, but been in the business for a while, about 30-some years. You see everything in the world in this business. You're not going to save everybody. You didn't create the situation. You're going to do the best you can, but you cannot get yourself injured. You cannot kill yourself for that situation. You are the first primary concern for safety, right? So good question. So if I'm the person in the vehicle and I have a child, I can carry a child right here. An older child, I can put them on my back and get out of there. As long as nothing's touching the vehicle and the ground at the same time, you can do any of that stuff.
What about even like when you open the car door, that could create
No, as long as you're staying in the car, the energy in the car is at one level, the energy on the ground is at a different level. So that's where the difference comes in. But if I touch the ground in the car in any way at the same time, this is how I get electrocuted. I could pop out the window, jump onto the hood, and do that method from there. But I can't touch the car and the vehicle at the same time. Yes, ma'am?
I did read somewhere that if you are in that situation, you should avoid touching anything metal in the car, inside the car.
No, it won't make any difference. No, you can use your cell phone in the car. You can move to the back seat if you're trying to get away from the engine fire and do it from the back seat. You can, whatever you need to do inside the car, as long as you're not touching the vehicle and the ground at the same time. That's key. Okay? Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, I have a question about moving the car. Here it says, don't attempt to move the vehicle and down lines. And did I hear you correctly that if there was a down line and as long as the people were in the car, they could drive it away from that line?
Yes. What that's referring to, and that's a good question, is that you don't want to take another vehicle and try to push the vehicle away, because now your vehicle becomes energized. Okay? So that's what they're saying in that situation. But if they can move their own vehicle while they're inside the car and that wire falls off, go for it. That's a good scenario for you. Okay? Any questions? Any other questions?
Could you demonstrate that what you call the shuffle? I
Sure.
didn't see that.
Okay, so you know what? I'm going to go over here. So shuffle means my feet are together, right? And my feet move toe to heel, back and forth, touching all the time, but never separating, right? Always touching together.
So if someone couldn't hop,
They can shuffle.
that's a safe way to tell them.
Correct.
Could you have another car push the other car until you're both out of the range, or is that
No, the other car will become energized, and there's two different levels of energy, and there's potential you're both going to get electrocuted. Okay? Any other questions on this? Yes, sir.
So just real quick, there's an area out in Sacramento that got transmission lines going across the Delta over water.
Mm-hmm. We have that in Antioch too.
Well, but off of Highway 160, there's like 3 sets of towers that
Right.
go right over the water.
Mhm.
for coding. What happens to those lines if one of those lines breaks? Does that break the energy, or are they, like you said, on a grid system and they're gonna carry energy into the water?
They'll carry energy into the water.
So,
Yeah, so
bye-bye windsurfer.
bye-bye windsurfer.
They would.
Yeah. So there should be signs in the area. If not, we probably need to work on that. But yes, depending on the voltage, it will energize the water to a distance.
These are the huge towers, so they're
Yeah.
carrying.
Yeah, they're probably carrying anywhere from 100 to 500,000 volts.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely will energize the water. Yeah. Now, I will tell you that once they hit the water, that the circuit will be will trip a circuit breaker, and it'll shut them off. So when they first hit, the water becomes energized, and then it shuts itself off on the transmission lines. Our distribution system doesn't do that, because there's a whole story behind that, but we don't do that. So it's only dangerous for the moment it hits the water.
When you're in it.
When you're in it.
How close, how far away?
It depends on the voltage, depends on the medium, where you're at, and I don't know whether it's brackish water, it's salt water versus fresh water. All that comes into play. Yeah.
Very little bracket.
Yeah. So it all comes into play depending on those. I can't tell you, 100 feet you're going to be safe when all of a sudden you're at 110 and you're going to get energized. Don't fall off your board.
I was gonna say, would he be safe if he just stayed on his board, but his board's made out of fiberglass, so.
There's so many scenarios. I can't give you a definitive answer on any of that. Yeah.
It'll never be totally dry out.
No, get a sailboat. I don't. Okay. All right. Keep it moving here. We're going to skip that one. So again, we talked about staying in the vehicle, getting out of the vehicle, and the hop and shuffle. This is what the hop and shuffle looks like. Again, you're out of the vehicle, you're shuffling here. You could shuffle and hop, you could hop and shuffle, you could just do one or the other. Right? Now she's going to hop. So that's what that would look like. Again, you don't have to hop very far. All right. Our metal boxes, you guys see these things in your neighborhood. You probably have them in this neighborhood here. Everything that's on the pole is in the metal box. 21,000 volts. The transformers in here. That recloser switch is in here. The problem with these after an earthquake is they can move, or someone can hit them with a vehicle, something like that. There's been incidences where this has become energized because the wire inside looks like this one right here. There's 3 of them about this size, right? They come loose from the transformer, energizes the box. Now you touch the box, you become electrocuted. So after an earthquake, we recommend you stay away from these things until we can come out and check all of our equipment. If you have a vehicle that hits one of these, suspect that it's probably going to energize the box and energize the vehicle. Don't interact with it. If someone's inside the vehicle and needs to get out, have them go through the method we just talked about. Okay? 1989, San Jose Police Department. Officer responds to a small pickup truck to a box like this. He gets on the incident. The person behind the wheel was unconscious. They'd had a heart attack. He gets off his motorcycle. He reaches for the door, and he gets killed. Line of duty death. Just like that. So again, he didn't recognize at the time, we never had this training, and didn't understand electricity conducts from one medium to the next. Again, substations. You have some substations in Walnut Creek. None in the downtown area that I can remember. They're very dangerous also. 100 to 500,000 volts is in a substation typically. You want to stay away from these. When they're on fire, let them burn. You're not going to do anything about them. You want about a 300-foot perimeter, 300 to 350-foot perimeter away from these. And remember, if the smoke's blowing that way, you want to be up this direction. So you want to be upwind from the smoke. The smoke can be toxic, has asbestos in it, and has PCB. Thanks, Rod.
What's on the corner of Ignacio and Civic, right next to WCI? Walnut Creek Intermediate? Right where
The building? You're talking about
Cass is built?
the building right there? With oh, yes. That's a small substation. That is
Right by
a,
the school.
yep, that's a small substation by the school. Got to have them somewhere.
But it is actually 350 feet away from buildings.
Probably is. We have a code that we have to follow when we build the substations too, and there should be plenty of signage and everything else. And again, it's only when they've been compromised that they become dangerous. Every day to day, they're perfectly safe. They have a lot of fail-safe mechanisms also. All right, what else? During a wildland fire, you have the potential for this to happen. This is a 500,000 volt wire. Heavy smoke, moderate smoke. The smoke will conduct electricity to the ground. So during a wildland fire situation, as we're having up and through the valley and in Butte County and stuff like that, if you're walking or running or trying to get away and you're underneath the wires within a certain distance, there's potential for that electricity to generate down to the ground. It doesn't have to even be, electrical wires or water or anything like that. So you don't want to be underneath these wires. Let the fire go through that area, stay away from that area. And so we have that potential. Again, the Oakland Hills fire mentioned that situation, right? Lot to remember. Again, ensure your own safety, communications, work as a group in your CERT, train. Training is the best thing to do and to understand how to apply all these things that we're talking about. Again, remember to call PG&E early. Keep your safe distances, 30 feet on a dry surface, 60 feet on a wet surface for your distribution power, 100 feet for your transmission lines. You know the difference, the big towers versus the wood poles, right? Again, my name, my contact information. I am your PG&E contact for this area. I cover Alameda, Contra Costa County, and about 6 other counties all the way to Nevada out this way out here. So if you need other things, other training information, anything like that, other presentations, please feel free to call me. I have cards if you want any of those. Any questions on gas or electricity?
Where we live and around many times associations, everything's underground.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Underground is the best. Not everything is underground because of the cost, right? As we were building years ago, it was cheaper to put the wires out. As we're doing new neighborhoods, the wires are going underground. It's less maintenance for us too, and better for safety. As we are able to, we're going to be putting things underground eventually, but anything new is going to be underground.
Okay.
Okay?